Greetings and a warm welcome from me, astrologer Patrick Arundell. Today, in the latest of my deep dive videos, I'm going to explore two huge cosmic events which are intrinsically linked and both occur on the 17th of March. First up, at 4:10 AM Universal, is a quarter moon in the fleet-footed Gemini, an air sign. That's house 3 for the collective. But the Sun, in a 90-degree right angle with the Moon, is in the 12th zodiac sign, the watery but mutable Pisces. A third 12th house energy is quite complex. A quarter moon to us on planet Earth looks like a half moon, and this waxing crescent, we have 2 quarter moons a month which go in between the new and the full moons. This one also is embracing the very spiritual and dreamy energy of Neptune, because at 11:22 AM we have the Neptune Cazimi. Now this is the penultimate one in this Neptune series. We're going to have one more next year on the 19th of March, and then we're going to see Neptune make its way into Aries. So that's really exciting. It will be just for 7 months, and it will move back into the sign of Aries on the 26th of January 2026. The big picture is that Saturn joins up with Neptune on May the 24th, 2025, also in Aries. Now, Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. And also the spring equinox, which is coming on the 20th, is going to see the Sun power into Aries, and that's the beginning of a new dawn, because that's the start of the Western tropical calendar. And this year, for the first time in over 200 years, it will be forging a brilliant link to the transforming energy of Pluto in the sign of the collective Aquarius. So we have this very reflective energy in the sign of Pisces, and the two events are linked. And the reason for that is because quarter moons provide a backdrop of energy for a week. So even by the time the Cazimi occurs and the moon has moved on to 0 degrees Cancer, the power of the quarter moon in Gemini continues to resonate in the background. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for joining us. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please share them. I try to interact with each comment. If you're a returning visitor, thank you so much for joining us once more. Your likes, comments, shares and subscriptions are gratefully appreciated. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, please do click or tap on the bell notification symbol, because that will mean every time I drop a new video, YouTube will give you an alert. Now I'm going to explore the archetypes of the quarter moon, also of the Sun in Pisces and Neptune in Pisces, which moved into the sign in 2012. They were last in this conjunction around about 1860, so a long time ago. So we're preparing ourselves, aren't we, really, for a new beginning. But the sign of Pisces is very much about reflection, and it's also the accumulative outcome of the journey through the previous 11 signs. So that's why it is really important to go back 164 years ago to see when the cycle began, when Neptune started its journey in Aries, because we're coming to the end of that. And what Neptune does is dissipate. It can, of course, give us an enormous opportunity to connect to a higher version of ourselves. Are we seizing it at the moment? That's going to be one of the questions that I'm asking. Now, if you'd like to download your free natal horoscope, you can do that by clicking on the link beneath this video. This will give you your ascendant, your sun and moon positions and houses, and all the planetary aspects, and give you a huge amount of information to guide your journey deeper into astrology. Once I go through the archetypes and the interaction of these two influences, I'm then going to dive deep and give you a forecast for the ascendant, the sun or the moon for each of the 12 signs. And it's definitely for the next week on the back of this particular quarter moon. But the Cazimi, we have one more to go. Remember, that's next year, the 19th of March. So we're going through a big cycle of change, and that is what we really need to understand. Please stay with me for more. So the quarter moon in Gemini occurs at 27 degrees and 3 minutes. So on the screen now, I'm showing the event chart for the quarter moon, and you can see the sun and the moon are at 27 degrees and 3 minutes. The moon in Gemini is very bright and sparkly and effervescent, but it's not so reflective. The sun, however, is really wanting to be very reflective in Pisces because it's at the end of its cycle before it moves back into Aries on the 20th of March and begins the whole cycle again. So here the sun wants to be a little bit more of a navel gazer, not necessarily open up. And of course, because we've also got Saturn in the 12th house as well, and also Venus, we may be ruminating about certain relationships and alliances we have, but there could be some discussion, and that's Gemini. And one of the ways people discuss things these days is through social media. And very often we can read or see something and we can respond in the blink of an eye, but that's not going to be an appropriate way to react over this next week because we're going to be so much more sensitive. We may actually have our perceptions skewed a little bit, and very easy to write something very rapidly because something's irritated us or someone's not being very kind or trying to intimate something, not necessarily in an outright way, because let's be honest about it, all that 12th house energy can be a bit sneaky, because the 12th house in traditional astrology is about hidden enemies. In modern astrology, it's more about healing, reflection, being a bit more reclusive. But if there is something that you have going on in your situation at the moment that's quite tender, I think the best way you can go forward through this week is to keep your celestial cards close to your chest, because if you do open up, someone, not even necessarily in a spiteful, deliberate way, could blurt something out that actually could be quite embarrassing. There could be a revelation that's not in your best interest. So also we may encounter someone who energetically drains us through their dialogue, Gemini. So they may be chatty, they may be one of those people who's a bit of a stress carrier. Oh, I'm absolutely fine. No, everything's absolutely fine with me. And as soon as they go, you're absolutely totally wrung out because they're not dealing with their inner world, but they appear to be dealing with it. But we pick up the energy because, of course, the sign of Pisces is very psychic, and our psychic perceptions are going to be absolutely turned up to max, but potentially overloaded. So the next week is probably a great time for us all to take a little bit of a rain check from social media. It might be difficult if you use it for work to not share anything, but certainly just be conscious that all the chit chat that goes on, whether it's through news channels, whether it's through TikTok, whether it's through X, all of that can erode our emotional well-being. So best to be very protective, cocoon yourself over the next week. That's the best way to deal with this particular 12th house energy, which, because of having Venus in the 12th house, very, very close to Saturn, if there is any undercurrents or disloyalty or betrayals going on or separations around relationships, if people are talking about it and gossiping, to put it in plain English, that could be something that's very, very tough to experience. Now on the screen now, I'm showing the event chart for the Cazimi. Now the Cazimi occurs at 11:22 a.m. and the sun has moved on to 27:21 and is applying to Neptune. And of course the Cazimi means in the heart of. So ordinarily the power and the passion of the sun maximizes the energy of the other player, in this case Neptune. But of course Neptune rules Pisces, very, very potent influence. I feel, to be honest, that Neptune's influence is fantastically underestimated. And I would say for all signs, ever since 2012, but particularly for Aries people, Neptune has had quite a profound influence. And I think we've become much more aware of its influence since the stern and grumpy Saturn moved into Pisces on March the 7th last year, because really Saturn's pushing us to work harder at the spiritual, psychological and emotional domain that we may have struggled with, but what we have done is possibly embrace Neptune in a very escapist way. And the ways to do that can be in a very positive way through reading, watching films, getting stuck into a box set and really tripping the light fantastic is a great way to use Neptune. If we think about Facebook, the whole concept of Facebook was predicated on images, very Neptunian. But of course, the escapism has seen a huge amount of ways of using different substances to escape from reality, which can be a more negative part of Neptune. And the 12th house can be about addiction. It also, of course, can be about secrets and things that we're ashamed of and we find difficulty with. So I feel what the sun is saying, even though the sun is very weak at this point, and I think that we could feel physically that our vitality is very low, what the sun can encourage us to do is to be more conscious of what we can gain through being in nature, being near water, embracing any kind of healing. So whether it is going to a sauna or having a therapeutic treatment or trying to find a more natural way of healing ourselves, then the purity that can come in a very, very heightened spiritual way from the sun combining with Neptune is definitely an opportunity. So if you are someone who works as a carer, a nurturer, in any kind of healing environment, or you want to go forwards with your business in a way where your perceptions are very, very important, this is a huge opportunity for sure. If, however, you work in an environment which is much more corporate, structured, doesn't have much room for feeling, you really could feel oppressed by this particular event and dispirited. And I feel that because Pluto's moved into Aquarius, and you can see on this event, actually Pluto is in a quincunx with the moon, which has moved into its home sign of Cancer. But actually Pluto's there saying, look, there's a collective energy that we're all feeling, and in some ways we're finding it tough. And so I feel that the energy of all this 12th house combination threading together is really pushing us to stop resisting looking at our vulnerabilities, our fears, starting to share more in a more comfortable way the parts of us that may not in the past have been so much part of the acceptable discourse that people had. That doesn't mean to say that we should pitch into victimhood to such a degree that actually it's become really naff, hasn't it? The amount of celebrities that are always sharing this, that and the other, because most people have had some pretty tough stuff at one point in their lives or another. But certainly it's good to have compassion, to be conscious that not everyone has necessarily had it as good as us. And those people who haven't had it as good and are excluded or feel abandoned or don't feel heard, all very 12th house energy, this is an opportunity for us actually to be much more perceptive and melt away some of our resistance and judgment which can be there. Also, if you are a creative, if you love photography, you love filmmaking, you write, you're a musician, whoa, this can be such a potent time for you to really embrace those talents to the absolute full. If you are someone who finds a pull towards more contemplative strands, whether it is through meditation or being in the present or through traditional religions, this can also be a very enriching connection, this particular Cazimi. But because of the square with the moon, which remember is going to continue from that first event for the following week, what we can get is a lot of potential for trickery and illusions. Now, unfortunately, we're seeing it doesn't matter in which country, the news cycle is used to manipulate how we will consume information in order for an agenda. That's just a fact. It doesn't matter whether it's left or right or whatever. That is a fact. So I think we're all craving for something that's more factual, but also more joined up. But if you are seeking to make an important decision at this time, it's absolutely vital you don't rush it, because remember, the moon in Gemini position can be a little bit quick to computate energies and situations and not give you the chance to really look at the details. So details could be a bit blurry at this time. I think it's absolutely fair to say. I think we're all becoming much more increasingly aware of all the microplastics in our rivers and seas, the lack of proper sanitation. In even developed countries, we're seeing a lot of discharges because the drainage systems are not fit to deal with the amount of rainfall that we're getting, and therefore pollutants are being pumped out. Food, why do we get so much cancer these days? Because I feel that so much food is wrapped in plastic. Maybe it has some things put into the food to sustain its shelf life, and all these chemicals are swirling round. And of course the sign of Pisces and Neptune means we don't necessarily see what can harm us. So I think that environmental consideration is something, whether you feel that the environment and how it's developing is just a natural phenomenon and it's not driven by man-made activity, or you're absolutely invested in the fact that we need to change our behaviour. Whatever your viewpoint, the reality is there's heaps of poisons going around. We only have to think of one very big cookware company beginning with T, which is still selling its wares years after starting the whole process of poisoning the people all around the factory, and all of that chemical is in our systems. However careful we are to wash foods or don't use that kind of non-stick type of merchandise, a lot of these stretchy clothes, also all the materials on seats in cars, they all have that material from that company beginning with T. I just don't want to get sued. But if you are someone who's feeling that life is overwhelming and difficult, what the moon in Gemini can do is promote the possibility of talking. And of course, talking therapies can be very powerful. We can use allopathic drugs, and that has definitely been something that a lot of people embrace. But then equally, there are a lot of people who embrace more natural and organic solutions to stress. But the talking side of things can be very good, but we also need to go through a process, because the Sun Neptune energy can be very unstructured, and therefore it's important to go through a therapeutic process. So if you are looking at having counselling, for example, you need to know exactly what your aims are, I feel, and what the person helping you, their aim is to assist you too. But for sure, the sign of Pisces is about that water, and it's of great concern to us, I feel. Even if you really enjoy some, sparkling spring water from the interior, France, Britain, wherever it may be from, all the microplastics that are in each bottle, the environmental impact of non-disposable containers is something we need to be conscious of. But equally with this event, a great opportunity to flush our systems out. So the best way to do that is with water, and good quality water. And if you're lucky enough to have a filter on your tap at home, that's absolutely brilliant. But the more water we can drink through this event, the better, because we're flushing out all the toxins in our systems, which is something that's really, really important. But whether we're reading a document to do with something we're about to sign, we're about to buy something online, third house energy, whether we're consuming data or news, whether we're involved in social media, the potential for things to be distorted at this time is definitely heightened. But as I say, it's also a huge opportunity for us all to try to raise ourselves up into a higher spectrum of being, be much more caring, compassionate, considerate, thoughtful, supportive and tolerant of people who may not necessarily have it easy. Please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces with the ascendant, the sun and the moon. But if you would like to ascend above this following zodiac forecast, you can take advantage of my unique package. My life roadmap report is very detailed and will give you searing insights into what you were given in your nativity when you were born. It's totally unique to you. And becoming much more intimately aware of those patterns and those energies will guide your future moves in a much better way. But in my special package of 30% off, you can also get your 12-month transits report. That's the moving planets in the sky interacting with your unique birth blueprint. Please see underneath this video for more information. So Aries, one of the great things about your sign is passion. And your passion is really going to explode into full life from the 20th of March with the spring equinox, because the sun will move to join up with Mercury, the North Node, and also Chiron. And when you have the total solar eclipse of the 8th of April, that's linking to Chiron too, exactly. And therein lies a clue. Because if you're one of those Aries people that really prides yourself on being very action orientated, taking the initiative, being on the front foot, setting the agenda, taking a firm grip on your life direction, that's absolutely fantastic. But I want you to ask yourself a really honest question. How has life been for you since 2012? Have you really changed since Neptune moved into your 12th house? Because I feel the chances are you've changed a lot. And then that change has accelerated since Saturn moved into your 12th house in March last year. And as I'm always stressing, it's important to look at the big picture. We can look at the two protagonists in the Sun and Neptune coming together in the conjunction, but what about the position of the quarter moon? That's really important. So it's not a week ahead for you to be too impulsive in terms of your communication. If you feel someone is not being very loyal or is in some ways playing some games, not revealing how they really feel, being secretive, entirely possible with that cluster of energy, including the position of Saturn applying to Venus. If there is a relationship where you don't really know where you stand, that could really be having quite the profound effect on your sense of well-being and self-worth. But the bigger picture in the sky is taking you towards something that's so profoundly exciting. It's a new beginning. And that new beginning, of course, starts in 2025 with first Neptune and then Saturn making their way into your sign. Now, of course, they're going to have their first blush because of the retrogrades. But by 2026, things are really shaping up for you in a different way. It may seem a long time away, but what you're going through at the moment, you're being encouraged by the heavens to really become much more aware of any part of your existence that you're not so comfortable with. So if there's part of you that you're resisting a little bit, you're not quite embracing and including some fears, some anxieties, some vulnerabilities, if you're not actually holding those and owning them, to be honest, as much as you could, they'll still be there. We've all got them. This is not a hierarchical thing. I've got them. If we can be more inclusive about those things, we then become a more whole person. And then also it liberates us from some of the emotions that drain us of physical vitality because of the things that are stuck within our bodies. I really believe that emotions are lodged into our organs, and therefore that diminutes our energy, makes us feel drained, makes us feel fearful because we're not quite owning it. So if that does call out to you, this is a huge opportunity to stop being so hard on yourself, to accept that the whole point of the human state is that we do have fears. Otherwise, thousands of years ago, we wouldn't have been sprinting away from a dangerous creature back to our cave. We'd just be chilling out, wouldn't we? Waiting for it to eat us, which we're not actually going to do, because something within our programming and DNA cautions us that sometimes we have to be alert to challenges. So your challenges at the moment are not necessarily ones you can physically see, unfortunately. So if there are people around you that don't have your best interests at heart, who are, in plain English, two-faced, you need to really keep your boundaries in place around folks like that. Just focus your time on those trusted citizens in your world. May not necessarily be the most sparkling personalities, but the people that you know are trustworthy and sincere and have your best interests at heart, or people who are naturally empathetic and healers. Orientate towards those people at the moment, because by the time the sun does move into your sign on the 20th, followed by that solar eclipse of the 8th, you're really going to start traveling forward. So if you do the inner work now, you're going to be more prepared to catapult forwards in the most exciting ways from then. So Taurus, I feel for you, since 2012, you may have developed some interests and philosophies that have been really exciting. Uranus has been shaking things up, of course, in the last 5 or 6 years, pushing you to be more provocative, not necessarily just stick with the familiarity that's often been so comfortable with you. And concurrent to Neptune and Uranus, Pluto was provoking you to experiment and learn new skills and ideas. So it's been a very exciting time for you. But then Saturn arrived in your 11th house last March. And I feel that some things that you were pursuing could at the present time feel a bit disappointing. It may be some certain associations you have and friendships. It may be some higher pursuits that you thought really were right for you. So it may have been some spiritual strands. It may have been that you've tried to be a good citizen and help other people, or connect with people in a very effective way. But what Saturn's done over the last year is brought a brutal cold wind at times. So whether it is about a romantic involvement, your network of alliances, your long-term plan with your ruler Venus applied to on this event by Saturn, this really is a time to think very carefully about where you're heading. And Neptune can be very much to do with idealism, but you don't want to be idealistic to the point that it's not going to work for you, because what that will do is that it will start to erode your sense of previous excitement. So because you are an earth sign, you do have an innate appreciation that things have to have some kind of tangible outcome. And that's the part of you that I feel that you can apply to this particular event. So it could be that you could connect to someone who you really find inspirational. Could be someone who you start following, perhaps even on YouTube, who just seems to resonate with you in such a perfect way, really chime with where you are. But equally, it could be someone locally that you just feel very comfortable with. But the converse can be true. You can start breaking away from something that really seemed to hold a lot of hope. So there may be the need to really have a little bit of a reality check. And because the quarter moon is in your second house, that's very much in keeping with the values of your sign. So second 11th square means that if there is someone who takes your generosity or your money or your possessions for granted, a friend who doesn't understand some of your need for boundaries, that may be a particular tie that needs review. If you don't see yourself long term heading along the same path that you're on now, it may be time to rethink. Also, because Saturn is applying to Venus in your sign, it's bringing or pushing you to be that much more earthy and realistic. So plenty of inspiration if you're in the right place at the moment to connect to people who can be hugely exciting to be around. But if you're around people who are not as exciting as you thought they were, or the paths you've tried haven't worked out in quite the way you perceived or hoped they would, rethink as quickly as you can. And that's going to prepare you for when the sun does move into your 12th house on the 20th of March. But just before then, you are going to have Mars move into your 11th house. So if you feel at times during the next week a bit washed out, a bit fed up, a bit let down, a bit disheartened, just know by the end of the week that we're going into, you're going to burst back with some fire, with Mars moving into your 11th and also Jupiter in your sign forging an amazing link with your ruler. So some good fortune can come out of this profound period of analysis that I feel that you need to do about your future plans. Are you being really realistic about some of your expectations? Check out where you are with certain friendships. Are they good for you energetically? And if you are in a romantic relationship, is it one that you really see is for the long term? Because if it's not, you may need to think about that too. So Gemini, for you, this is a terrifically important event because of the quarter moon being in your sign, because that's reminding you that even if there are challenges with any quarter moon, because the moon is very much to do with our emotional needs, the sun's where we want to be most strident, and in this particular case for you, the sun is really pointing you towards your role in life, your professional hopes, your goals and ambitions, and how you gain recognition. And it's possible that if you are in an environment professionally that just doesn't nurture, it is very harsh and there's no encouragement, it's not a simpatico to who you need to be as an individual, you may need to rethink over the next week. But if you're someone who works as a healer, a psychic, a carer, you could actually find you're very much in demand at this time, and it's an opportunity to raise your profile in a significant way. Now, as the following week goes on with the influence of the quarter moon, Mars is going to move right to the top of your solar chart as well, and that will bring a healthy extra dose of self-confidence. So one of the things I feel that can happen with the Sun and Neptune is you could wobble a little bit if you feel you are in that environment where, there's not really much latitude, pardon the pun, in terms of encouragement. Your determination to get what you need will strengthen as the following week goes on, because Venus, the planet of charm, is also in that 10th house, and although on this event very close to Saturn, and it is going to connect to Saturn by next Thursday, that's just making you much more serious. So you may find some self-doubt, some uncertainty, but by the end of the following week, you're really going to develop an iron will, and it's going to make you all of this, clarify what you want, and not be so swayed, I feel, by other people's attitudes, instincts, and ways of being with you. Your determination to pitch yourself in the way that's right for you is definitely set to be strengthened. So Cancer, this event for you is likely to maximize whatever you're feeling. So if you're feeling in a very upbeat frame of mind, you could find yourself with the Sun aligning to Neptune, wanted to check out a vacation, go to see a show, something cultural, an art gallery, travel somewhere as soon as you can, particularly somewhere where you can download and immerse yourself in the culture and history of that particular destination. If, however, you're grappling with something at a more internal level, the chances are that your emotions can be turned up to max in a way which can almost be overwhelming. One of the things the 9th house is demanding is truth. But Neptune's not great at dealing with truth. It's much more to do with evasion and mysticism and creating a particular perception. So if there is someone, for example, that you're attracted to, but they seem to be a little bit unavailable, don't reply to your messages in a timely way, that can be hugely frustrating and leave you feeling a little bit insecure. The great news is that although Venus advances through this week, from the conjunction it has with Saturn on this event to being an exact conjunction by Thursday, your determination to get to that truth is going to be immense. And then Mars moves into your 9th house as well. So if you do find yourself a little bit unsure about the sincerity of certain people around you, or information that you're discussing, particularly around a contractual matter, isn't clear, by the end of the week, you're going to develop a furnace-like energy and determination to get what you want from the situation. And Mars moving into Pisces is good if you do want to book that holiday and break out and do something more spontaneous, in a way that the quarter moon at the start of the week may see you uncharacteristically a bit timid and just feeling much more aware of the energy around you, but not in the mode to take a more action orientated approach. But it will get better as you get to the end of the quarter moon period. Leo, the 8th house, where the Sun and Neptune come into a conjunction, is very much about where we're most devoted. It's also where we're most invested. It can also be where life is changing and there is some kind of transformation going on. Now, obviously with Neptune, transformation could be at an extreme spiritual level. But let's think about the more practical dimension of the 8th house. The finances that we share with a partner or a business associate, or even our relationship with the person or the company or organisation that provides our banking facilities or our mortgage. If you are needing to discuss anything of a more factual nature, it may be difficult to get the information that you're really searching for. Also, because the moon's in the 11th house of friendships, if there is a group that you're aligned to, and there is some politics going on of jealousy and control or backstabbing, I really feel that can be something that's a big turn off for you. And you may use the 8th house energy as Venus moves forwards and applies exactly to Saturn on the Thursday, and then Mars bursts into Pisces on the Friday to really assert your right to evolve on, to break free. And of course the 8th house can be about sex. And if there is someone that you're strongly drawn towards, but you don't know if they're really serious about a future commitment, the 11th house, the future, however much you're yearning for them, if it's not real, I feel that Venus and Mars will let you know the outcome by the week's end. And of course the other thing is that if something isn't working, the Sun powering into the sign of Aries with the spring equinox is really a chance for you to pick up a lot of fiery Mars energy to assert what you need from a situation, whether it is more freedom. So an all-in situation that isn't quite being all-in in the way you want could come to an end, but equally the Sun moving into Aries, joining up with Mercury, the node, and Chiron, could give you such a determination to confront something that's been elusive from you and really get the answers you need. And by the end of the week, I feel you will have them in your grasp. Virgo, ever since 2012, there may have been some magical moments, but also some deeply disappointing ones. Ever since Saturn moved into your 7th house in March last year, I feel that there could have been more of that disappointment in some ways, but really I think it's been driven much more by your need to get a greater sense of certainty. And that means you've been reinforcing your boundaries in a more robust way, which is really good, because Neptune in the 7th house can see us being too sacrificing, giving away our power by being too people-pleasing. And you know, one of the greatest ways to destroy any relationship is not by having a firm sense of our own identity, but also those boundaries which are healthy. So I feel this event could stir up a little bit of perhaps the downside of what you've experienced since 2012. But by the end of this week, you can emerge with a notable greater understanding of your situation, except perhaps around professional relationships. And the reason for that is because the moon position is in the 10th house, very difficult to disguise our feelings. So if you're trying to relate to someone at work and they're moving the goalposts all the time, being very unreliable, fickle, changing things to suit the mood they're in, that's very disorientating and very annoying. But because Venus is in your 7th house, you can still maintain the détente cordiale. You can still be diplomatic as it moves to apply to Saturn on the Thursday, you may make a really important point. But it's Friday when Mars moves into your 7th house, that if someone really hasn't been listening to you and you've been doing all the sacrificing and they've been evasive, it seems playing some games, to be honest, Mars will give you an iron will in the following weeks through to the end of April to get a much clearer understanding of what your relationship prospects are. So the week might start with some uncertainties, some confusions, some mysterious signals that could be baffling and infuriating all at the same time. But by the end of the week, you're going to be taking charge of this whole process much more than the other person could imagine. And even in a good relationship, you're going to be providing much more of a leadership role as the week draws to a close. Hi Libra, I'm sure you've heard that saying that we can't pour from an empty jug. And that's really what is so fitting, the analogy, of course, because of water and the rulership of Pisces being a water sign. But it may be true because being, a very conscientious person, as you often are, very attuned to other people's needs, that makes you very alert to meeting those needs. And I think since 2012, you may have developed a whole role for yourself in terms of providing a service that has had a profoundly good influence or been of great assistance in a business, a job or a role, or in your own enterprise. But at the start of this week, I feel that your physical vitality may feel extremely low. And because the moon is in your 9th house, that's very much about escapism. So if you do have a lot of obligations and responsibilities, some of them you may feel that you have no choice but to work with, such as supporting elderly parents or if you have young children. But if you have some kind of wiggle room in order to change your situation, do consider it this week, because with your ruler Venus being applied to by Thursday by Saturn, you could reach a point where you really can't take any more of giving more or pouring more from that jug than you actually have. And it may actually be almost to the point of outright rebellion, because with the sun moving on Wednesday into your opposite sign, that joining up with Mercury, the node, and also Chiron, is bringing a much sharper focus around the need to have those boundaries. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't fulfill your obligations, but I feel that Saturn applying, or Venus, your ruler, applying to Saturn on Thursday, does bring you to a point when you may just say no more. Also on Friday, Mars moves to join up with Saturn and Neptune and Venus in your 6th house. But that's really good because Mars being in your 5th house has been very creative, perhaps seen you more focused on your social situation. And one of the great things about Mars in the 6th house is it can provoke us to take more care with our physical health. So right through to the end of April, you can be feistier about setting those boundaries, saying what you will or won't do. The time's come really to move even more forwards from being the ultimate people pleaser you were to really getting that balance right between what you give and what you get. It's not necessarily a perfect equation, but if it's too much give at the present time, you're really going to feel very drained, very disillusioned, perhaps even exhausted. And the quarter moon for you, therefore, is reminding you of the need to break out, do your own thing, have a little bit of space. Don't be so caught up in all those obligations. So Scorpio, you have a rare gift for working out the dynamics of a situation without even having a conversation with the other party. The 5th house, where the Sun and Neptune combine, is superb if you do want to showcase your creative talent, your flair, in whatever way. But the 8th house energy of the moon in Gemini is cloying, it's clingy, it's possessive, it can be jealous. And if there's someone who's inhibiting your desire to pursue some interests and passions that are important to you, whether it is a romantic partner, whether it is a friend, maybe the demands of looking after your children may be part of the equation, As Venus moves to apply to Saturn on Thursday, you're going to have a serious conversation about this, but then your traditional ruler Mars moves into your 5th house on Friday. And that's really significant because the sensitivity of the Sun and Neptune is definitely one that can provide gifts and opportunities, but not if it's dissipating you in some way in terms of your vitality. So I think you're going to have that challenge. There may be a big conversation you need to have at the heart of this week, and some frank exchanges of opinion can be made. But Mars, your traditional ruler, is such a key influence moving into your 5th house as it does on the Friday. That's really going to give you a lot of extra thrust, charisma, sex appeal. The spring equinox midweek links to your modern ruler of Pluto in the 4th house of home, emotion and family. There may be some reorganizations you need to do in order to foster the environment for you to really shine in terms of your talents. So because you're a fixed sign, you can be a little bit resistant to changes. Of course, Uranus has been provoking you over recent years, particularly around relationships, to look at things afresh. But as the week draws to a close, you're going to emerge from this quarter moon week and the Neptune Cazimi with a fantastic opportunity when Venus and Jupiter forge one of the most beautiful links possible. And as much as you may feel a bit disheartened at the start of the week, you could end this week feeling really encouraged by what you've learned. Sagittarius, ever since Neptune moved into your 4th house in 2012, then Saturn last year, I do feel that it's been quite provocative in challenging you really about that side of your nature that likes to be the ultimate free spirit. Your appreciation of knowledge, travel, different topics, interests, moving and flowing around in life has been a core part of your nature, but I feel that you've been evolving at a rate of knots as an emotional being. If you have, however, had some challenges around where you live, or there's been some losses in terms of your emotional life, or perhaps you've become a parent, or there's been care that you've needed to provide for elderly relatives, the very start of this week, your sensitivity around all of this can really be heightened. The quarter moon's in your sector of relating, so maybe it's a relationship where you feel someone is not as attuned to your sensitivity as they could, or maybe someone will accuse you of that. And with Venus applying to Saturn by Thursday, is there going to be a discussion about that? I think it's possible. Maybe you'll be having a discussion about the physical elements of where you live. If you want to make some changes, refit a kitchen, modify a bedroom, work on your outdoor space. All these things are possible with Venus applying to Saturn in the 4th house. Or if you're finding the responsibilities of family life are really limiting that part of you that does need to breathe some fresh air occasionally, the great news is that the spring equinox and the evocation of the fire energy of the sun moving into your sister fire sign is going to be brilliant for you, because that provides some balance. You probably feel that you have evolved a lot in terms of your environment, your sensory observations, your inner world have all evolved hugely, but you still need to have some fun. And the key with that particular spring equinox and its relationship to Pluto is you just need to have fun in a way that feels right. So continue to be guided by your emotions. By the end of the week, as Mars punches its way into your 4th house, if there have been some delays around getting some things done in your home, you're going to be absolutely determined to achieve those changes in the following 6 weeks. So Capricorn, as this week begins, you may find that your sensitivity around communication is really, really high. This could see you almost analysing messages that you're getting from people, wondering if they're really being totally open and transparent in what they're telling you. The quarter moon for you, 3-6, suggests you could keep your mind a bit too busy in trying to be too virtuous. The best way I feel for you at the start of the week is actually not to overthink things, but certainly if you are wanting to be productive in the week, just set yourself a few key targets and let some of the other peripheral things go. But if you are interacting with people online, or perhaps you've been thinking about getting some new tech or a new mode of transport, vital that you get clarity before making any key decisions. There could be quite an earnest conversation at the heart of this week. As Venus applies to Saturn, you may feel that if there has been some uncertainty over something, or someone's been a bit tricky, or they're saying one thing but meaning another, your determination to punch through that is going to be very strong. That's going to be increased by Mars on Friday, but just be aware that the spring equinox is in the part of your life to do with your feelings, your emotions, where you live. You've already got Mercury there, which is not its best location. It's fine in Aries, it's not so good in the 4th house, but you have the node there and also Chiron. And the solar eclipse, which is going to occur on the 8th of April, is going to be so close to Chiron. So although you can have conversations this week, you can chat to people, you may feel that someone's not being very upfront, but then you need to ask yourself, are you actually reading into situations meanings that aren't there? And has that been a bit of a trend since 2012? Have you been particularly suspicious of neighbours or siblings during that period of time? Saturn's been asking you to keep it real over the last year since it moved into Pisces. By the end of this week, Mars moving out of your 2nd house into your 3rd house will give you more thrust and more determination to tell it as you see it. But it's vital at the start of this week you do not rush comment on a situation, because I feel that your thinking can be quite fluid, but also at times you could be a little bit confused. So take it all back to the facts and figures, analyse the information carefully, perhaps talk to someone you can trust, and they will give you a different perspective. And by the end of this week, you'll start to gain traction in quite a significant way. So Aquarius, the combination of the quarter moon in your sister air sign of Gemini, which is very playful and sociable, the 5th house, with the Sun and Neptune in the 2nd house, which is the appreciation of calorific goodies and perhaps a little bit of escapism in the mix. And perhaps the combination with the quarter moon could see you go out and really have quite the night. And maybe that's something that you really feel that you deserve. But if you are feeling very sensitive about any situation in your world at the present time, particularly to do with your sense of self-worth, your core foundation, if money has been a bit challenging, particularly with Saturn in the 2nd house since last March, the fact that Venus applies to Saturn could mean by Thursday you may find yourself being a bit thriftier and needing to move things around a little bit. Once Mars moves towards the end of this week into Pisces, your determination to really get straighter and improve your financial situation will be really strong through to the end of April. And what's going to drive it more than anything is the Sun moving in the middle of the week into Aries. We have the start of the Western tropical year, but that link between the Sun and Pluto in your sign will give you much greater clarity. But at the start of this week, I feel if you are tempted to, eat too many chocolates, have some comfort food, go out for a drink, but really sort of have a little bit of a sort of blowout, that won't necessarily be something that your system and your emotions will particularly appreciate. But as the week goes on, I think you're going to make sense of all of it much more. And in general, since 2012, I feel Aquarius people have perhaps shown, a lot of generosity with Neptune in the 2nd house and really given to a lot of good causes. It's just that the overall environment that we're all living in at the moment is quite challenging, with fuel costs going up and interest rates and the cost of accommodation and so forth. So Saturn's kind of saying if you can just flex to deal with that and become more structured and more disciplined, then Mars will come along to actually boost the thing that the Sun and Neptune could see you worrying about at the start of this week. And you're going to end this week with Venus and Jupiter on such fine form, really forging a tremendous angle with a significant piece of good news developing for you. So Pisces, this event for you is huge, of course, because the Sun's in your sign, but also Neptune is your co-ruler. So what does it mean? Well, essentially it's about your identity. And if you are born more towards the end of Pisces, this could be a time of big transformations. Transformations in your psychological outlook. The quarter moon, however, is in your 4th house. This is where you want to play safe, you want to be protective, perhaps even defended. It's very much about security. The 1st house is about really seizing the moment. But Neptune could make you a little bit timid or unsure or lacking a little bit of conviction. So it's important to keep with the process, because with Venus in your sign applying to Saturn by Thursday, that could be a little bit of a crunch point, but also it can be a time when, if you are wanting to give yourself some kind of makeover, you can make some clear decisions. That makeover isn't necessarily just to do with the way you dress. It could be to do with your plans. Where are you feeling inspired? Where do you feel you're gaining traction or not? Now, because the Sun moves out of your sign and into Aries on Wednesday, that can start to see you becoming more conscious of the traction that you are generating with the things that are working. But by Friday, as Mars arrives in your sign, that's like a furnace energy of enthusiasm. And some of the self-doubts and moods that have dominated over the last 6 weeks can make way for a time of action, certainty, and things are really going to start to race forwards. Also, a glorious link between Venus in your sign and Jupiter in your 3rd house suggests a really good piece of news. Text message, email, a letter can come to you as the week draws to a close. So if you do start this week feeling a little bit unsure, uncertain, feeling a sense of trepidation, not quite certain that you are on the right track, I feel if you can overcome this, by the end of the week, you really will be travelling forwards at quite the rate of knots. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me. Why not check out my in-depth March 2024 zodiac forecast for each of the 12 signs? Please see the link beneath this video. Thank you.